Hello and welcome into the RotoWire esports show. I'm Andrew Laird, joined as always by Ethan Sexton today to talk about Friday's four-game LPL LCK slate. Before that, quick word on Thursday. Ethan, you and I both used some language that we don't usually say on this video. I'm not going to say it now, but needless to say, I don't think either of us are going to be playing T1 anytime soon.
No, I mean, we're sick of them, man. I'm sick of them. It's bad enough that they do all these roster swaps, right? So, of course, they did roster swaps again today, right? So, anyone who played them, which we did warn, right? We warned, that this could happen with the roster swaps. So, anyone who played them likely had zeros, which, it didn't really matter because, the part about them yesterday we were wrong about, well, I was wrong about, was saying that they had as much upside as the two LPL favorites, which they obviously didn't when they get swept by Fred at Brion, right? So what a nightmare, man. It's like, why would you ever want to play T1 at this point? Because, the 10-man roster, all these roster swaps, you can't even get the pieces of the puzzle right, and then even if you do, they're just going to get crapped on by one of the worst teams in the league. So it's like, what a frustrating experience they've been all year long.
So I checked my lineup before they started, and I thought they had started, and so when I played a T1 lineup, Teddy captain. I look and they're all at zeros, and I'm like, did I actually get every single one wrong? Like, that was my first thought, that they somehow switched everyone that I had.
Right.
And I'm like, this can't be right. Like, there's no way I got all of them wrong. So I look and I'm like, oh, okay, it hasn't started yet. So I checked back like a few minutes later and I was like, okay, Teddy's still at zero. That means they haven't started. And then I scroll down and I'm like, oh no, my other guys have points. Actually, somebody had negative points. So the zero actually would have been better. But then I looked at the lineup and I was like, I knew what I was getting into. So I couldn't be that angry.
Right.
But then it didn't even matter because they lost.
No, it's just like, screw you, T1. We're done with you.
I think it's as simple as that. Like, I don't think the risks are worth it anymore.
No, it's really not. I think the only reason to play them going forward is to get ownership leverage. It's the only reason. They could be good again, but it's like, I don't know. They're really inconsistent as a team, and they're really inconsistent with their lineup. So it just sucks, man. It's hard to play them, except for the fact that they're probably going to be very low owned the rest of the year, right? So
I almost feel like they're not even good enough to warrant the frustration of.
I know they should be, but they're just not. Yeah, I know. Right. It's awful, man. Faker, if you're watching this, retire or come to North America and make a fat paycheck next year.
Right.
Because you're not even playing, buddy. I know you're not going to watch this, though, so it's all right.
I'll say that the RNG long stack worked out, and I feel like we were pretty adamant that if you were not going to play top, and I didn't play them, that RNG was the way to go. My best lineup was RNG DRX, which didn't really do it nearly enough. I think it was RNG DRX. Let me see here. Yeah. With a Cryan captain. So I ended up actually with an RNG team slot, which I know is not really the optimal way to go.
Yep.
I mean, it cashed in this tournament I was in, but my T1 lineups ultimately just sunk me for the day.
Yep. Yeah. It looks like to me that actually a DRX long stack was the way to go with Bao as the captain.
You're right.
Just he ended up scoring enough, even though they didn't sweep. And DRX was fairly low owned, actually.
Yeah.
So that was the way to do it, but I just wasn't going there. I was on KT RNG in tournaments, and I thought maybe after KT's game 2, they could come out and do something. If they won game 3, maybe I'd be all right, but didn't end up being that way, so no big deal. It had a shot anyway.
Sure.
Just didn't come to fruition.
So the tournament I was in, actually, somebody pointed out in the Discord that the one I was in actually finished lower than the bigger GPP. So the one that I was in was actually a 3-3-1 I'm sorry, 3-4-2-1. That's what it was. RNG
Okay.
long stack with DRX short stack and a Fredit Brion team one off.
Okay.
Which, like we mentioned, but like I don't think anybody's playing Fredit Brion team stack or team slot against T1 and getting 64 points is like a reasonable expectation.
Nope, but it's the second time that a Frederick Brion one-off has been in the takedown lineup, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, just whatever. I don't even care.
4.8% in that one. But we move on to
Yep.
Friday.
Yep.
Another 4-game slate. We have JDG, humongous favorites over E-Star, who did not deliver earlier this week and doesn't seem in a good spot to deliver on Friday. Gen G against your boys from Sandbox. They are also gigantic favorites. And then the two closer ones are Suning against Victory 5 and Hanwha Life against Red Force. I think Red Force and V5 are obviously going to be the underdogs that people consider. We talk about like how well E-Star can score against anyone, but like I'm not sure JDG is one of the teams I'm ready to go after.
No, no, me either, man. We can kind of like E-Star against like more mid-level teams, but seems like JDG have really righted the ship.
Yeah.
And they're coming back to form, right? And we think of them as a top team in the league, and I think that's just a bit of a mountain too high to climb for a team like E-Star. So I'm not really looking at them tomorrow, like you said, and I said a couple slates ago, right, that I'm off the sandbox bandwagon. At this point, it only took pretty much the entire season for me to get off it, but better late than never, I guess. So yeah, I think Gen G and JDG will be pretty chalky tomorrow. I wonder though. So I think JDG are probably the highest owned team, right? I wonder if Suning, by way of their recent performances, comes in as the second highest owned team. So I'm never really that good at predicting ownership, right? But they've been playing quite well lately, and I wonder, in this matchup against V5, who are frisky, let's call them. I think people will still kind of think that Suning are the better team and should come out and really dominate probably. But I think that's kind of baked into the DraftKings prices because they're actually more expensive than Gen G, right? So even though the odds don't quite reflect that, I think Suning are pretty. I wonder if people go towards Suning more than they go towards like Gen G or I think especially I think definitely they'll be more on them than Hanwha Life probably, but I wonder if they come in as higher owned than Gen G tomorrow as well.
I could definitely see that. I think the way I was looking at the two kind of like reasonable underdogs, and I find that the only reason I'm more willing to look at V5, and you just called them frisky, which I think is kind of an appropriate term. Like, I think if they win, I think they outscore Red Force if Red Force beats Hanwha Life. Like, if those two underdogs win, I think Victory 5 end up with more fantasy points. Simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. And like Suning haven't been world beaters, but I think they only have like one loss to a team that you're like, well, they really should have beat them, right?
Yeah.
All the other ones, we've gone through this before, but all the other ones are the teams that are as good or better than them. So Suning don't really have any bad losses, but V5 are a good enough team that they could take this series. So I kind of like them as an underdog. I don't know if I end up there. Maybe in GPP I'll go that route, right? But I think I like them more than Red Force. I mean, I like them more than all these other underdogs. I mean, and it's primarily because, to your point, if they win, they're going to score better than these teams. Even if every underdog won, V5 are going to be the highest scoring. You'd have to think, right? So, I can get behind playing V5 tomorrow, even though I don't expect them to beat Suning, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I totally think that. Like, I think the upside of V5 outweighs the upside of Red Force, and like neither
for sure.
should win, Red Force maybe has a slightly better shot to do it, but even then, it's like the odds are basically the same. So if you're playing that way, I just like I agree with you. Like E-Star and Sandbox are just like basically not on the slate for me.
Right. No, I think you just got to lop them off. I think only way somebody plays them is because they're going to be 5% owned, right? But I really can't get behind either team. And this is coming from the guy who wanted to play Sandbox all the time earlier this year. I can't get behind either one of them. They're both, like, E-Star on their day can be pretty good, right, against some of the weaker teams. But I think in these matchups, it's just JDG and gen.g are going to be a bridge too far for both Sandbox and E-Star tomorrow, I think. But that JDG are priced way up, so it's kind of like today's top esports in a way, although the matchup is a little bit harder than OMG. That's the really big consideration with using JDG especially is, can you afford them and make a competitive lineup without having to dumpster dive, basically. Whereas gen.g are priced down a little bit compared to the other favorites, so they're a little more easier to fit into lineups.
Yeah, I wonder, like gen.g is going to be that team that I feel like sweeps so too easily, but like they're cheaper than Hanwha Life, they're cheaper than JDG, obviously. Yep. But like odds wise, they're huge favorites. Like they should like it's going to be that classic case where like it's just, they don't need to score enough, and so
right,
you can get their games not played bonuses, but ultimately it's just not enough fantasy points. But if they end up being owned less than Suning and JDG and maybe Hanwha, maybe I'll go there. I don't know.
Yeah,
we know who's playing. They don't switch up.
Right. I mean, I agree with your general sentiment, though. I think like maybe they're better as like your short stack. They don't score as well as some of these other teams, especially like Suning or V5 or even Hanwha Life. So JDG are kind of like that as well, but I think in this matchup, JDG will score better. gen.g, like, they don't always put up the highest kill totals in their game, so maybe you just want to short stack them and go with, like, the bottom lane in the team slot or something like that. I think even if you were going to play an underdog with gen.g, I think I would long stack the underdog instead. So, like, if you were going V5 gen.g, I think I'd go 4v5 because I think they could outscore gen.g in a win, so...
Yeah, it just feels like E-Star will force JDG to do more than Sandbox forces gen.g to do anything.
I agree with that, yeah. So, Sandbox pretty much are just rolling over at this point, man. It's brutal for my boys.
Is there any reason, I mean, we've talked about this like every time Red Force is on the slate, that like Diakdom scores enough, when they do well, or really anytime, he's the only one who scores.
Yeah.
So it just seems like if you're going to use any, like you can use him if you think they win, but like you almost don't even benefit enough if they win because the scores might not be high enough for everybody else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're like, if you want to go there, I think they're your short stack too, right? Like, you get Diakdom in there, maybe pair him up with Kellen, and then you kind of put the team slot in because the team slot, if they win, will score similar to whatever other team you're using them with. But yeah, they don't score very well. I don't think they're going to win anyway, although Hanwha Life are a little up and down sometimes.
Yeah.
I just feel like the upside's not really there except for Diakdom, and I'm not really confident he's going to get to a place where he has a lot of upside either tomorrow.
So let's say all the favorites win. Do you think it's possible that? Well, I guess Suning, gives us the reason to not to think that it's possible you can get the highest scoring lineup without JDG. Like Suning's upside is where you'd go if you like if it's today's slate where you're like I don't want to play top, play RNG like that. The equivalent on Friday is don't play JDG, just play Suning.
Yep, I agree with that. Hanwha Life, we've seen them put up pretty high kill totals in games before, so maybe this is the series they do it too. I think gen.g are just the team where you're like, they're probably not going to outpace JDG, right? But they certainly could. But I think they're like JDG and Gen.g are kind of similar, where they don't always play at the highest paces necessarily. So yeah, I think Suning and Hanwha Life could both fairly easily outscore JDG tomorrow, depending on what happens. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't feel bad about going down from JDG as the highest price options tomorrow and trying to go with like a Suning or a Hanwha Life or a Victory 5 or whatever, and just getting the salary relief that way. Because I do think those teams have upside, right? So enough so to match JDG tomorrow.
Right, enough to match them. That's kind of how. And theoretically, if you're paying all the way up for JDG, then the other spots are just not as good as if you try to do some sort of. Suning HLE doesn't like fall easily either, but
right.
Double jungler day or something like that. Ugh.
Yeah, it's hard to do depending on what teams you use, though. So
yeah,
it'll be a little tricky tomorrow, I guess.
For sure.
Yep.
All right. If you guys have enjoyed the video, if you could please hit the like button below. Feel free to subscribe to all the RotoWire videos. You can also hit the alarm bell down there to get notified whenever there's a new video out. If you'd like to try RotoWire for free for 10 days, just go to rotowire.com/pod. That's POD. Gets you access to the entire site, all the sports we cover, as well as our subscriber Discord. All right, Ethan, thank you for that, and good luck on Friday.
All right, same to you. We'll catch you tomorrow.